Here we go. We are live. We're back in action after a couple weeks hiatus. Episode number 147 of the Seacoast Beverage Lab podcast is upon us for the 11th of July, 2016. Some of us are back from Tampa from the Beer Bloggers and Writers Conference, one of which, being me, is not. I've held the fort down here in upstate or upper
New
U.S.
England.
Yeah, New England, because that's what I do, and I am always late to the game on the Beer Bloggers Conference. But we'll get to all that later. Thank you again for joining us. Hope you guys are doing super well. I'm here punishing my way through. I mean, it's really a treat, but I'm going through this Jack's Abbey 40 of Framingham Lager that I got down at the brewery a couple weeks ago. I was nervous about opening it today. It was the first time I opened it since I went to the brewery, and perfectly carbonated, tasting great. And the story behind the Jack's Abbey 40s is their limited run for their first run, and then next year they're going to bring them back full swing because they said bottling it was a pain in the ass. So they're going to try to figure out a way to bottle it, more efficiently and do it. And then you can tell because on the 40 it even has 12 ounce. It's not going to focus, but has a 12 ounce label on it.
Whoops, dope.
But yeah, it was. I mean, for $5 a 40 of craft beer, there was no way I was passing it up. So I went down and grabbed a couple. Big fan. Shout outs to them. That's it for me. I'm going to shut off the podcast. No, I'm kidding. We have we want to use this episode to talk about the Beer Bloggers Conference that went down in Tampa Bay, Florida. So I brought two people who just so happen to be co-hosts on the show. So Carla, what's going on? Welcome back.
Hey, how you doing? I apologize for my hoarse voice. I may have blown it out doing karaoke on Saturday night, but just saying. So I am back. I got in at 2 a.m. last night, and I am drinking a Von Trapp Helles.
Nice.
I think I've had this on the podcast before, but I'm really digging on this beer. I like that style a lot, and I think they do a really good one.
That's what they sang after the Sound of Music when their voices got hoarse. They just pounded some trap and
yeah.
Shano, flipping the hat backwards. I understand getting gangster. It's whatever you want to do. What's going on?
How's it going? Sean Jansen from twobeerguys.com. I'm currently drinking a Busker Czech-style Pilsner.
Nice.
From Berkshire Brewing Company. You'll notice this is actually in a 12-ounce bottle rather than a 22.
We are all.
I know lagers. We're all doing the lagers.
I say we're feeling the heat of the summer. I know tomorrow up here is going to be quite sweltering as well as the rest of the week. But we all know what beer to go to when it's about to get hot.
Exactly.
So I kind of just want to jump right into it. I really don't have much on my end. I want to give a shout out to our old co-host Mike. I went down to Ipswich and visited a couple places with him this weekend. Shout out to Ipswich Brewery. Great restaurant, good food. I didn't eat food, but I had food the first time I was there. But the brewery was great. And just shout outs to, I brought 4 cans from Garrison City, and they were tasty. I brought one of their new beers called Squad Goals, which is an IPA. And they're my favorite Chaos, so it was a crowd pleaser. If you see my Instagram, we really did it up, as 30-year-olds do. We brought 3 40-inch TVs into Mike's living room and played Xbox all night. So, try to have a better weekend than I did. But
and hopefully his fiance wasn't there.
She walked in and she knew it was gonna go on. She walked in and she's like, "Oh right, I forgot about this." And we're like, "Hello." But yeah, it was good times. But that's what you do when you get a little bit older. Is you have those budget hangouts, which are super awesome. And then Sunday I just slept, and that was that. But let's go. Whoever wants to talk about it first. I know you guys are, you just got back from the trip, and your voices are kind of losing, or you're losing your voices. But however you guys want to go about talking about it, I'd love to hear about it as someone who didn't go, and maybe someone that wants to go next year wants to hear how these things kind of go.
Yeah, so Carla, if you don't mind, I'll start. And then,
yeah, go for it.
So this was, for those listening and hearing about it for the first time, this was the 7th annual Beer Bloggers Conference in 7 years in 7 different locations. This year it was hosted at the Tampa Marriott Waterside Hotel, which, if anyone's been down to Tampa, it's right outside of where the ice arena where the Tampa Bay Lightning play. The event itself was from Friday through Sunday morning, but there was also a pre-con excursion in Jacksonville where they picked you up in Tampa, brought you to Jacksonville, and then basically brought you back the next morning. We did not Well, Carl, you didn't go on the pre-excursion. We didn't go on it, but we talked to some of the folks that did, and this is kind of third person through Huck Finn, so you got to take that with a grain of salt. I guess one of the stops they went to was a brewery, and they weren't open yet. And so Huck was, I guess they're going touring around the beer. They're like the brewery. They're like, when are we gonna get beer? And Huck was like, well, they haven't opened yet. Well, what time do you open up? He's like, no, we haven't brewed beer yet. So he's thinking of like, okay, they have to open up at like noon or whatever, and they can start pouring beer. But instead, they're at the spot that didn't have any beer. It's their first spot that they went to, so they convinced the organizers to go and stop off at a store, and they loaded up to make sure that they had beer with them on the bus itself. But other than that, I think they went to 2 breweries and a restaurant for dinner, or maybe it was another spot. But basically, anyone that came on the pre-excursion, it was kind of interesting. Before the event started, registration was open around 11, and the conference started at 1. And about 12:40, you're like, where is everybody? Then basically, like, it's a place just starts getting busy with being open for the event.
Nice. So wait, but go back to the pre-excursion real quick. How is the Jacksonville beer scene during that pre-excursion? Did you notice anything outstanding, or anything that's worth noting?
Because we didn't go, we don't know. But
you both didn't go. I'm sorry.
No. But what we heard, other than the not having any beer, Virgin Brewery there, I heard positive things about, especially the restaurant scene. Actually, people were talking about. But the folks at Visit Jax, it's a like the Jackson Tourism Bureau shared and retweeted a bunch of stuff, so people are interested in kind of hearing some of the bloggers' thoughts about that section. You can go back to Thursday, Friday, and see a bit of that action online.
All right, back to registration. People are coming
I'll make a correction there too. Sorry, they actually went to 4 breweries, which included Wicked Barley Brewing Company. They're the ones who haven't opened up yet. They're actually opening up in a couple days. Ardwolf Brewing Company, and then they went to Engine 15, Bold City Brewery, and Kickbacks Gastropub. Everything was all located within Jacksonville.
All solid names. Yeah. That's all I need from me is a good name. I'm in.
And then they ate breakfast at a place called Maple Street Biscuit Company, which would have been right up your alley. Did
you guys go to Pine State in Portland when we went over there in Portland, Oregon? Pine State Biscuits.
Well, that was Slappy Cakes.
There was also a place called Slappy Cakes, but Pine Street was legitimately a Slappy Cakes. Street? Oh, I remember Slappy Cakes too. Yes. Let's go to Portland right now.
Yes.
All right. Sorry. Back to the conference. So registration kicks off, and as veterans, I know, and even I've been to 2 of them myself. Going to these conferences is a great way to meet people. But I saw from like early pictures from your brother Ryan that the beer was being passed around already before the conference was being started at the tables. Is that kind of how things went the rest of the week? Is kind of passing around, sharing beers?
Well, Craig Hendry was walking around with his cooler.
Attaboy.
Yeah, he was literally like being the concierge for the entire group. Like he was just like, oh, they don't have any beer at their table. I'm gonna go walk over there and tell them about this awesome Mississippi beer. And every year he brings beer from Mississippi, and it's better than the stuff he brought last year. So go Mississippi. I didn't have a single thing that he poured for me that I wasn't impressed with. So they're catching up quick.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about this, about the day one kind of things you did.
It starts off every year, as you know, with Julia Hertz of the Brewers Association, where she kind of gives a snapshot of where the world is right now, where it's kind of changed. The big highlights from it, I took some pictures from her slides. I don't know if you did also, Carla, so jump in at any point. So you talked a lot about that beer was still, it's a 105.9 billion business, where spirits comes in around 69 billion, and wine is less than 40 billion. So just the beer business itself, and she kind of talked a lot about the fact that there weren't as many beer sommelier places as you would see in the wine industry, and that it's still not to that point of where that education and knowledge is out there in the market, even though that the business is more than double the size of of the other spirits that are out there. Also did a note of kind of talking about how many breweries have closed in the last 3 years. So the number and rate of breweries at opening is still much higher, where like 2013 was around 68, 2014 was around 73, and 2015 was 67. Now that's just, it didn't say when they started or why they opened or closed, but just some people, their business just, they didn't just continue their business. But another big thing that she talked about too was where now the industry's turned into beerifications. It's not just a industry of producing beer and going out to the bars and drinking beer. It's more of you going to a destination and you're finding beer things related around it. And that they estimated in 2014 there were 10 million people who toured breweries just in 2014. So
I like those stats.
It's pretty crazy. And the obvious thing, I mean, there's always the discussion around it where the culture shift in the industry is towards local beer versus imports or national beer. But it's very interesting that bottles and cans are still only 10% of the overall market, but increasing fast with the number of packages that are actually coming in cans now.
Nice. I think it's super important to know that even though it's nice to meet all these people in separate areas every time we have these conferences, it's also good that they highlight the beer scene there too. I mean, it's obviously important that you're there to learn about other things, but I think it's cool that you have some good stats coming out of it. But I know what other kind of well, first of all, wait a second. On just joining the panel, let's give a quick shout out to Ben Watts. What's up, buddy?
Hi, everybody.
Ben's screaming. I mean, he's wearing it right now. He's got the good polka dots. But are you drinking anything by chance, or you kind of just?
I am. I have some Jack Savvy Excess that Rob was kind enough to pass on.
Nice.
Yeah, this is delicious.
And we didn't tell them that we all have lagers tonight, so.
Yes, we're all in possession of lagers this evening.
Oh, nice.
So let's get back to this year conference though. Some of your favorite sessions, because it's broken down into sessions, right? It's like a little speech break kind of thing.
The next one is a little bit more data heavy too. If I can go through a couple notes in that, was so we had the first presentation was based on craftbeer.com, and the next was by the NWBA chief economist Lester Jones. And NWBA stands for National Beer Wholesalers Association, and he actually started off funny. And Carla, you may remember them. I didn't get a chance to actually take the photos.
I periscoped it, so it's recorded.
He was making a joke that you need to be very careful about the stats, because one of the two slides that he mentioned was that if you compare the number of people who eat cheese and plotted against the number of people who have got caught in their bed sheets and died, that you can make a correlation just by showing the data in the in a line charts that if you eat cheese in bed, most likely you're going to get wrapped up in your sheets and die.
Right. Correlation is not causation, and he had some very funny slides that had to go with that. So me as the data geek, I got a huge kick out of those. And there is a lot of really great information in his talk about how you parse things up and basically how the shifting demographics of the people in the country are going to have a lot of effect on who drinks beer in the future, not just necessarily how good or bad the breweries are, because we've got, an aging, people who are aging into drinking alcohol that are not necessarily going direct to beer. And you have to kind of figure out what do you do with those people who go straight to liquor or wine, and, do you win them back? What happens later? And it's all changing all the time. But there was another funny slide in his talk about brewery names, and he did like this cute little longitudinal study where it was like.
I can read it if you want.
Yeah. Oh, you have that one. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
That was fun.
Hit it.
They reviewed, and not he personally, but NWBA reviewed 4,000 plus brewery names, which would probably be within the last up to date now, because we're only not too much further than that. But there are 90 breweries with the name River, 63 with the name Creeks, and 53 with the name Mountains. But if you go 1 for fields, 2 for streams, 3 for prairies, 2 for deserts. So if you're named a river, a creek, or a mountain, most likely, or in that area, is what someone's going to name the brewery. For animals, dogs are in with 30, bears 29, horses 25, but spiders 1, snakes 2, and lizards 2 are out. If you go to birds, eagles and hawks get 9, where doves and pigeons there are 4. For bulls versus cows, 11 bulls, 2 cows. But even so, size doesn't matter, where there are 60 breweries with big in the name. Oh, size does matter. There are 60 breweries with big in the name with only 1 with small.
One brewery has small.
Exactly. And direction is also important, where there are 40 breweries with north, 35 with south, but only 10 with east and 24 with west.
I wonder if there's someone in there taking those notes down, like, hey, next brewery name has to be Bull.
Well, that's what the next.
Oh, yeah.
Bull West.
So one last thing on the general stats is that numbers matter too, where there are 48 breweries that are prime numbers and 19 that are composite numbers.
Like regular.
Yeah. So the most likely breweries to open in your neighborhood tomorrow are 3 Big River Dogs Tap Room in the Northwest, 5 Big Mountain Bear Brew Pub Northwest. The 4 likely to open in your neighborhood: 4 Tiny Desert Spiders Tap Room in the Southeast, and 6 Small Field Snakes Brew Pub in the Southeast.
That's awesome.
So it was actually pretty cool. And another thing that he had mentioned right around the same time is that how the Brewers Association counts breweries are basically licensed and operating and producing beers. But if you look at the number of them that have received TTB permits, there are currently 6,080 breweries as of December 2015. And if you look at that number by the states, New Hampshire would have 63, Maine would have 84. And what's the current number in Maine, Carla?
80-ish.
Yeah, so it's probably that's closer to date.
Yeah, Threshers is opening like this weekend, so it'll be 80 or 81.
Massachusetts permitted breweries 124. Rhode Island still only 15, where Connecticut is 59, and Vermont is 66. So when you start adding that stuff up and looking at it from that way, you can kind of project how many breweries are going to be. I mean, there's still 2,000 more breweries or 1,500 more breweries that are going to be receiving their permits and licensing. So when people talk about where the bubble is, I mean, all these breweries are in the planning stages of opening up. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
So he had a lot of good stuff in there, and then he kind of ended the whole presentation with some sort of not predictions but questions about where the market's going to go. Where for Mega Brew, is it going to be local versus global? What does Mega Brew actually mean for the industry? High-end craft and import volumes continue to grow, but at a slower pace for 2016, and still adding more cases as industry capacity expands, but on a larger basis. Innovation will drive growth, more SKUs and more complicated businesses. Domestic macro volumes will show a slight improvement, but won't carry the industry. Economics, employment, and wages and disposable income will be affected by that. So then there's other questions. Ciders versus hard soda versus sparkling water versus mead. Cans versus bottle versus growlers. Tap rooms versus traditional on-premise. Will draft ever grow? They were making a lot of notes that over the years, the purchasing of people going out to buy and drink beers at a restaurant has actually diminished.
Yep.
It's on the downward trend.
And I asked the question, and I got a couple chuckles, but I was like, is hard soda done yet? And what he said essentially was that maybe, but it's going to take the market a while to like pass that signal back. So they're basically producing all this stuff, and eventually we'll realize that it was a fad. So
God, right.
because the last time I saw him do a version of this talk was when we were all up at that festival in New Hampshire.
Oh, was the same guy?
Yeah, it was the same guy.
Nice.
So it was right when Not Your Father's Root Beer had just like exploded. So he had talked more about it during that talk. To have him, he kind of shrugged and went, "Yeah, we'll see what happens." But I wouldn't mind if that kind of died down a little bit, personally.
It was very interesting. Both of them were data sets were very interesting. Yep.
Awesome. And did I see there was are you going to go in order, or can I hop around?
You can hop around.
No pun intended. But was there I saw that one of them that popped out to me was a sour beer.
Yes, that was cool.
Can you go in a little bit of detail on what was going with that?
So they brought some folks from Petrus. So I don't know if you've ever had Petrus.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So they came over, and what I really liked is they started their whole presentation with really a review of what people mean, what they mean by a sour beer, a barrel-aged beer, an alembic style beer, and went really through some technical stuff about how the barrel-aged beers, typically the fermentation happens before you put them in the barrel, whereas when you put them in this big foeder, you want that, fermentation to continue, yada, yada. So there was a lot of, really good technical stuff in there. So I'm looking forward to getting that slide deck, but I learned a lot. Cool. So the first half of the presentation was that. It was kind of like, here's our history, here's how we've been doing the lineup of beers that we have. And then they launched into this story. So they had, and Sean probably has, I don't have my notes in front of me, but probably has both the guys' names. But basically they had somebody who was a brewer and someone who's kind of more of a marketing guy. And the brewer starts telling the story about how, one day he's walking through the brewery and sees his, marketing guy that's up on stage with him, sees him pouring a little bit of Petrus pale or aged pale, which is the yellow beer, into their aged red, and like blending it. And he kind of stood there and was like, "What are you doing in my perfect beer? What? hey, what are you doing?" And he was like, "No, this is too sweet. I'm adding a little bit of whatever." And he was like, "What are you? It's crazy. You can't do that." And then he handed it to him to try it, and he thought it was like an awesome, it's the owner. So they're sitting there going, okay, well, this is really quite interesting. So they started to think about offering it, basically encouraging people to do that and to make their own blends. So what they did for us is they had a sample flight thing, and they poured out for us the Eau de Brune, the aged red, and the aged pale, and then gave us one blank glass in which we could kind of experiment and play around with mixing those to our own liking. And they did have a special pack that they had marketed, with a mix of them in there and a bit of glassware to kind of encourage folks to do that themselves. But I just thought it was, so Sean's holding that up right now,
nice.
Or at least holding up a picture of that right
Good
now.
pick. Yeah.
And for me, it was super fun because not only was it, geeking out and very informative at the first part, but it never felt really like a commercial. It felt a lot more like, hey, this is what we did, and, we're kind of coming around to that, and having some fun at the same time. And then at the end, they talked about, they had another beer, which is unpronounceable to me, so I'll have to look it up.
It's like Walter Licky or something.
It's like all consonants all stuck together. And but that is they did basically a wild, and it's kind of a hoppy wild, and it's super good.
Nice. It's a wheat beer.
And they canned it.
Half a Weizen.
Ooh,
yeah.
Oh, they canned Petrus canned beer, huh?
Yeah. So it looks.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's the first bit and then wild.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Butchered it.
So that honestly, as far as beer education was concerned, was totally my favorite session.
Neat.
Of course we got to drink beer during it, but it was really focused, and we were all having these moments of looking at each other like, oh my god, that's so good. And I had forgotten, I don't think I'd had, Sean and I were looking it up on our phones, how long it had been since we had Petrus Pale, and I think we had both checked into it at the 2012 Bloggers Conference for a different tasting in which we were not blending them together. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And it was the Sour Power mix pack or something. It was Sour Power.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what they had.
And for a lot of people, though, I'll mention real quick, I think even for my wife, too, it was their first taste of a sour beer.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously we're now in this explosion where a lot of people are getting into it and trying it. I'm not saying it's overhyped, but it's a good thing for those that like sours. But only a couple years ago, like you were saying, 2012, maybe a little farther away, but still, as far as 2 years ago, Petrus might have been the only readily available sour.
Yeah, definitely one of the first that I ever tried. They gave me, I think it was the Pale at Lions Pride back before it was Ebenezer's. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
Sweet. I just thought that out of the looking at the agenda, I thought that was like, especially if you've been there for many years, that was the one that stood out more because it's like, oh, it's a little bit different than what is usually there at the conference. Not to say that the content that's there is the same every year, but it's done by different people. But it just seemed like a nice little addition to the year's events.
The two food sessions. One was the world of beer that had all these different food pairings. You started off with this huge like pretzel that's bigger than my head.
Nice.
Bigger than his.
Yeah. And then the second food session was hosted by the hotel. And they had it. It was kind of like not like a buffet type deal, but with the food and beer pairings in each corner. And then
so they had like stations, so you'd go and pour the beer that goes with that little tidbit. You know what I mean? So then you'd bring that back and taste that, and I liked that.
Really good.
There was some really good food there. The hotel really went all out as far as beer is concerned, and actually during that dinner, so I don't know how many hotels you guys have stayed at in your lifetime, but I don't know if maybe it's just me, but every time I go down to like the hotel bar, it's always like Bud Light, Coors Light, maybe Sam Adams. So he announced, he was talking about how excited he was to have the conference there, which, we've been to other hotels that are like, yay, but these guys were like really into having us here. They weren't just tolerating the fact that there's all these crazy
That's awesome.
people taking over their hotel. But so he announced the best-selling beer in their hotel. You want to guess it?
I'm hoping it's Cigar City, but I don't know.
Islay. Cigar City.
Get in there. God, what a great town.
Not only is a local beer, but it's like a hoppy, good local beer. So it's not like, it's not like the lowest common denominator of a local beer. So that was I thought that was pretty neat.
He said their hotel goal is to actually get people, either local or vacationing, coming into them to visit the hotel rather than go someplace else.
Beer tourism's a real thing. Got to embrace it. People need to embrace it. Hotels too. But speaking of Cigar City, did you guys go?
Yes.
Let's talk about it.
On Saturday evening, I think, we did basically like a multi-stop. I know, right? We did a multi-stop.
Well, after live beer blogging.
Oh,
it's kind of all connected.
After the speed round, we all got onto buses to go to dinner, but they basically had a 3-stop tour, and they split us up into 3 different groups, which I don't think a lot of us realized was going to happen ahead of time. So I wasn't with most of the people that I wanted to hang out with. I just, it was whatever first bus that I got on. Not to say anything against the people I was hanging out with.
Losers.
No, but there were conversations I wanted to have with people over dinner, and I'm like, you're way over there. But they brought us to 3 different breweries, and Cigar City was one of them. So for my group, Cigar City was last. But at each brewery, we went to Coppertail Brewing Company, and then Eulalie Brewing, and then Cigar City. And at each, they had just these pairings that were freaking phenomenal.
Awesome.
And then they'd have a couple of beer samples, and they gave us kind of tickets for some of the locations to, if we could order a couple more samples other than what the pairings were or whatever it was. And I just thought that was really well run because you didn't feel rushed like you had to eat this really big meal, all, quickly all together. And we got to go to 3 breweries besides. But at Cigar City, my group, and I'm not sure if they had this out when Sean's group was there, but we did get to try Hunahpu. So I was pretty happy about that.
Wowzers. Sean, thoughts?
That's a bucket list beer for me that's now checked off, and I will not stand in line for. So
how was it? I mean, because you see the lines. So
it was like this liquidy, like rich, velvety chocolate awesomeness. It was just great.
How do I kick Carl out of this pot?
I know.
Right?
Eject.
Look at this thing. Yeah.
But I don't It was late.
So it was like a mobile dinner. So you went to one brewery where they had a food and beer, and then you went to the other brewery which had food and beer.
Yes.
Who planned that? That sounds like a cool thing to do.
I believe that was also the Tampa Bay tourist group.
They were
there.
going for it. That's a
But
cool
they
thing.
did a really spectacular job,
for them.
and it must have been a lot to coordinate too. I mean, like 3 groups of people coming through, and the timing and everything. We had no issues at all. They brought us basically to 2 of the breweries to kind of like a back room where they just let us go and hang out. In one case, we were kind of like out on a patio, and it was just
That was at Eulalie.
yeah, that was at Eulalie.
Yeah.
Nice view of the sunset, freaking gorgeous.
They partnered with actually Brew Bus Brewing,
Yes.
which
Oh,
is
that was
not
cool.
only a brew bus, but they also have their own brewery.
Brew Bus Brewing, Granite
They were
Grow Tours
their
Brewing
own-
Company.
Exactly.
Their
Like the sound of it.
Dave,
They were
if you're
throwing their
listening.
own beer on the bus. So they were like, this is our beer. And I'm like, that is freaking weird and cool.
Oh,
They had a
man.
blueberry beer, which I'm always surprised to see outside of Maine, somebody
Yeah.
doing a blueberry beer.
Was it good though? Thoughts?
It was
Live
very
review?
sweet, that one
Alright.
in particular, but the other beers were pretty good. It was just not what I was in the mood for at the time. So I think if it had been a different circumstance, I would have been totally into that blueberry, but at that moment, I was not feeling it.
Fair.
But in general, the concept's pretty awesome, and I wouldn't mind, that kind of being an official thing. Like, oh, here's our beer as you tour around in between these places. Like,
Right.
yep.
It was crazy. Brian, I did have, and I brought home Cafe Americano. I don't know if you can read that. It is
Oh, nice.
is a double stout from Cigar City.
I'll be over very shortly after this to give a quick taste.
Exactly.
Just a quick taste test. But nice. So yeah, that's such a cool thing to do, and I think, man, that's a good idea for like even a Portsmouth Beer Week or a
Yeah.
Portland Beer Week. And I
It
mean,
worked out really well.
but and the whole idea about these beer weeks is kind of sharing ideas, not stealing them. But I think that'd be a cool thing for Sean or Carla to bring up to the appropriate people to kind of steal, because
I
that's
mean,
a cool idea.
it kind of takes a lot of manpower, but it does
does.
get a lot of people through. A couple of different places. You can have like multiple sponsors, kind of making it all work.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing to check out. And honestly, I'm sure that the folks that organize this would be happy to help or give us some tips on how to do that if we wanted to do something like it for any of our events.
Oh yeah. So let's get to some of your favorite experiences, because obviously it's 4 days jam packed with beer. I know one of the things. Well, actually, I'll back it up. Favorite thing of the Night of Many Bottles, as we talked about year after year at these things. One of the main showcases is they ask you guys to bring a 6-pack from your local area. So let's start with Carla. Carla, what did you bring, and then what did you like that other people brought? Because it lasts a couple hours, and you're tasting a lot of beers. So
Yeah, so I brought with me Bissell Brothers The Substance and Bissell Brothers Lux, which is their rye IPA, and I brought Allagash Cerise and Allagash Little Sal, which is the blueberry one. And I got a
I don't even
kick.
know if anyone had it.
I got a kick out of actually bringing around the Substance and the Lux around and being like, have you heard all this stuff about cloudy New England IPAs? This is what they're freaking talking about. And like pouring it into their glass and having them go, what the heck? Like it was
weirdo.
but then they tasted it and they were like, but this is fantastic. So, because they had all heard about this, but they don't really have a lot of those in their neighborhood. So I just kind of enjoyed doing that. Beyond that, I would have to go back and check my Untapped, but I did have a couple of cucumber beers that I'm waiting for somebody up here to do some kind of cucumber-based beer, because every time I have them, they're pretty awesome.
The new Sam Adams one. Have you tried that?
No, what?
Cucumber goes.
Is it
Sam
in
Adams got to goes.
Is it in the summer mix pack?
It is.
Oh, I'll have to go look that up. But it was just, I think it was because it's so hot down there too that there's a lot of that like fruit, very refreshing beer kicking around. I'm trying to think of Night of Many Bottles, like which one I was like super swooning about, but it's a little fuzzy.
It was hard. It went from a pre-dinner reception,
Yeah, like
hosted by Green Flash, into dinner, into the beer social where all the sponsors and breweries were actually pouring beer. So there was 12 to 15 stations of beer,
Yeah.
Yikes.
and then that went. And then you're basically in the same room. They opened up a wall, and you go into the Night of Many Bottles.
That's cool.
Which had fewer bottles than it usually does.
So it was net of some bottles.
They weren't
Many.
labeled, but there was still a lot of stuff left over.
There was still plenty, but it was
Nice.
not the overwhelming, crazy, absolute insanity like it was years before. And I'm sorry that I'm just exhausted, but I wish I could
No, it's
remember
fine.
the ones that other folks brought. But thank you to everybody who brought one with, because everything I didn't have any that I didn't like, among the mix. So they were all excellent examples from wherever they were from.
Nice. And Shano, you brought, and what did you like?
So we brought some Jack Sabby, and we brought some. What else did I bring besides Jack Sabby?
I saw. Did you bring Night Shift?
We brought some Night Shift. Yep, brought Night Shift
I read the blog.
and a couple cans of Riverwalk too.
Nice. Oh God. Well, how are the cans Riverwalk anyway? Because
Delicious.
I know. I need to get down there to get some.
Oh really? I mean, I gotta say I love Riverwalk too. So.
And your faves between you and Rye Guy?
It's hard to say during that. Just like Carla, I don't even
It's
know
true,
if I
there's
was
so much
on my
going on.
phone untapping. People were like, "Hey, give
Yeah.
this a try. Give this a try." You don't even. And people, it wasn't. Imagine like 2-3 tables all connected to each other, and everything was in the middle,
Oh,
and
okay.
everyone was around it on the
So
outside.
it wasn't like a sign with like who brought this.
Oh,
no,
no,
they did it
no.
electronically this year, so there is a record of them all, but it wasn't tied to the beer.
Okay.
So every year they try to fiddle with this a little, and I'm not sure if that was super successful. But honestly, what we end up doing anyway is we go to the beer that we brought, and we run around and going, try this, try this, try this. Anyway, so it's kind of like it's obvious who brought it because they're the ones sitting there going, have you had this thing?
Yeah.
So that was pretty fantastic.
Cool.
I did have some new Glarus. That was good.
Oh, nice.
And foreshadowing to next year, which is going to be in Milwaukee. When they announced that, I had a clue ahead of time, but I'm still thinking about how big my suitcase is going to have to be to bring back all the new Glarus I want
Yes.
to bring back from Wisconsin.
Yeah, and I instantly looked up where Wisconsin was, and it's not drivable, so never mind. I was, but yes,
It is really cheap to fly to Chicago and then take a train up for like 45 minutes.
hot tip.
It is super cheap to take a JetBlue from Boston to Chicago, or even Portland to Chicago for Delta.
Great idea. And I saw Southwest goes there, but it's still pretty expensive.
And they haven't ironed out the pre and post yet, so they might do a pre somewhere in Wisconsin. They also might do a pre in Chicago.
And then bust you to the thing.
But if they did a pre in Chicago, then you could just fly to the cheap land, and then bust you up.
Yeah, so keep your eyes and ears on the Beer Bloggers Conference and Beer Bloggers and Writers Conference.
Yeah.
But before we wrap up the discussion, favorite thing, shout outs before we.
Well, I just wanted to make sure you guys, Brian, you saw that Carla presented.
Let's go. What'd you present about?
I got approached with fairly little notice, but it's for a session that I've been wanting to do anyway for a while, which is we learn a lot about things like social media and how to work with breweries and whatnot, and I'm always sitting there going, but who's going to tell me how to write better? So I did a session about a couple ways and tips and tricks to make you kind of a better actual writer. Because there are some people that don't have any writing background at all, and they don't have an editor to give them, some guidance. So I was up there with Bob Townsend, who's been writing for newspapers and writing about beer for quite some time. He wrote a bit of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. He's basically had a beer column for a really long time. But he also does music and other types of reviews like that. So we kind of got up on stage and kind of went back and forth about some of our tips. He's always had an editor, so he was talking a little bit more about how to craft a story, and I was talking a little bit more about the nitty-gritty of how to catch yourself making stupid mistakes.
Nice.
So it was immediately post-lunch, so when I was up there, everyone looked like they were about to pass out and fall asleep. But I did have a couple people come up to me afterwards and say that they liked it. So so my impression of how it went is not incredibly accurate, but I was like, oh no, I'm putting them to sleep. But I did share a couple of tools that people can use to check their own writing. There's an app called Grammarly that you can anywhere you're writing on the internet, it'll check all your grammar just like Microsoft Office does. And then it gives you a report of what you're usually messing up, so you can get better at it.
Cool.
Kind of neat.
Yeah.
So I had fun doing it. It ended up being shortened because the buses coming back from the lunch were late, but I think it was actually better at that length. I didn't really want a full hour.
Yeah.
But I was grateful for the opportunity, and always welcome anybody who wants to talk about writing or geek out about writing a little bit more.
Hell yeah. I mean, so are you guys, you just got back, but should we be expecting some sort of post recaps from some things you might not have mentioned on this show, on your blogs?
Yeah, I got to decide my angle, but probably by this weekend I will get at least my first thoughts up. I'm exhausted right now,
Yeah.
but the more people I talk to about it, the more it's going to gel into my head.
Hell yeah. So maybe the easiest way right now for both of you is to go to your Twitters and Instagrams and make sure you check out what you went through, and then just keep an eye on the blogs.
Yeah, I apologize to any of my Twitter followers that were not really interested in the Beer Bloggers Conference, because I tweeted a lot while I was there.
Sean, thoughts?
I'd like to give a shout out to Michael, who just answered my text message and turned a light on above me. So awesome.
Oh my God, that's awesome. Time for a smart home. You need Philips Hue, Wi-Fi lights.
I would just say that just a final thought was that the keynote speaker, he was great.
Who was it? Ryan
Stan
Jansen?
Hieronymus.
Who was it again?
It was Stan, and I can't pronounce his last name very well, but it's Hieronymus. Hieronymus. He has been like a writer, awesome person forever. He used to, he blogs all the time. He wrote a book about hops. He's just, that's a beer writing name that everyone should know. And he did kind of a really cool retrospective talk on, what it means to be a journalist in this day and age and what's going on with all of that. It's hard to describe. I know that somebody periscoped it, so I believe.
Well, a lot of what he said too, just on going with that, is that it doesn't matter what the medium is now, and that you have to be up and knowledgeable at all the different mediums, even though you might not. He's like, you could even use Snapchat or use these other different mediums, and as long as you're writing, and it was a good presentation.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think you mentioned Snapchat, and I think even almost all the bloggers that I've met through these conferences are now tweeting about like, what in the hell is Snapchat? How do I figure it out?
Do it.
Because they think they have to do it. I gave it the big ban hammer, like, no thanks, I'm good with it. So I'm interested to see who uses it for what, but it is completely staying off my phone, like, without a doubt. Because I like change, but that to me is but it's cool to see people use it for good. And if maybe next podcast 250, I'm like, guys, I want to mention one thing about
Snapchat is that I got really frustrated with Snapchat the first time I tried to use it, and I literally was thinking, I'm too old for this, I've lost it, this generation is just screwed up, I can't use this interface. And I actually read an article by someone at Wired magazine who said, you're not old, it's just a terrible user interface. And I was like, thank you.
Written by a 20-year-old.
But that made me written by like a hip tech guy who's seen everything and everywhere, and was just like, no, this isn't instinctive or intuitive at all. So I made myself learn it. I use it occasionally, and I try not to. I don't do any direct spam. Like, it's not sending it directly to you. But if anybody wants to follow me, it's the Beer Babe, and it's 99% beer and travel stuff.
All right.
And occasionally just weird random shit I run into every day.
And you do not want to follow Sean's Snapchat because he doesn't get it. He thinks it's something completely different.
You could see my turtle collection.
Well, I don't know. Are those chocolate turtles? Just eating food constantly on the Snapchat. So again, keep an eye on both their blogs for more updates on that. And again, as I mentioned, 2017's Beer Bloggers and Writers Conference will be in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the information is already on the site. I believe it's beerbloggersconference.org still.
Yep.
So you can check it out. They also have these kind of tiered costs. So if you're in the industry or a citizen blogger, you can kind of get cheaper if you book early, kind of thing. So check it out. Wisconsin, especially if it's a place you never thought you'd go, it is a cool place to hang out with a lot of like-minded folks from around the U.S. I mean, we did it. We talked about it, and now your voices are completely gone because both of you have gotten home today, whether it be 2 a.m. or 2 p.m.
So I went to karaoke with the beer wench Ashley and Gerard from Beer in Florida, and so we
God.
had a good time. And we at about 1 a.m. Florida time, we actually called up via Google Google phone or whatever. We called up Brewdad because couldn't come. He had opened his own bar in California, so he was at the bar, and he gave us a virtual tour while we were sitting there in a bar going, "That looks so cool."
That's cool. Good for him.
So we were totally drunk dialing Brewdad, but he was there and he showed us around. So I just got to give a shout out to him for doing that. Opening your own business is hard to do, and he's been kind of a veteran of the beer bloggers for a long time. So congrats, shout out to him for.
We called him the night before, and he didn't appreciate the time that we called him.
When,
But we don't know why he picked up.
It's the easiest thing is just don't pick up, or maybe he's pissed. He doesn't want to you're breaking up and throwing. But awesome. So again, keep an eye on the stuff. But Ben, I know you joined kind of late. I mean, it's been a couple weeks since your newborn child has come in. But have you been up to anything beer related or any new beers you've tried that you're like, hey, cool?
Yeah, I actually got the opportunity, to give a little backstory here. We sent my son down to my parents in Connecticut, and they're like, "Where do you want to meet? To exchange the human traffic." And, I was like, "I think there's a place in Mass. It's called Julio's or something. I don't know. They had a nice parking lot there, and there's Starbucks. Maybe you guys can get some coffee."
They got a Stop and Shop there.
So
Starbucks right next
I
door.
did get to Julio's for the first time in probably a year or a year and a half.
Oh, nice.
I mean, the place is insane. It's huge. It's got everything. Probably everything that's available in Massachusetts is available there, as far as distribution goes. Got some fun stuff. You know what I forgot to walk away from there with, which I'm kicking myself, is Tank 7, because it's been a long time since I've had some.
that's a good beer.
Yes.
So good. But what did I like? I liked Building 68. Is that what it's called?
Building 8?
Building 8.
They had that up there? Nice. Yeah. Hadley, Mass. Shout out. Northampton.
That was great. I tried a double IPA from Avery, which I didn't love. It was okay. And there's some other goodies down there that I'm looking forward to. What else? And then I saw Rob today. Like I said, I saw Rob from Jack's Abbey, and he passed over a couple beers and was saying that there's going to be a new Jack's Abbey Nebco collaboration coming out soon. Some stores in New Hampshire will be getting it. It's
Nice.
going to be a Pilsner. It sounds pretty awesome.
I'm into it. Nice. What was I going to say to you? Boy. Nope. I got nothing. I thought I had something, but negative.
Yeah, I went up to Banded Horn a couple weeks ago. That was fun.
Oh, nice. Always a good trip.
Oh, awesome! Did you check out their new deck? They're
No,
out?
it wasn't open yet. This was I think it was open the Wednesday after.
I still haven't seen it either. So, but I saw pictures from people who went the opening day or whatever, and it looked really cool.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Oh,
I
yeah.
really just wanted to get in there and play some ping pong. With
Are you going to come down for the Guild Fest?
I doubt it.
Well, the new baby.
Yep.
All right, Sean. I was like, oh, damn you, Sean, with the chat. He's all good with the distractions. That's awesome. No. I'll end it on this note. I want to give a quick shout out to Throwback, who just recently celebrated their 5th anniversary at the brewery.
Yeah, they had a party on Sunday, right?
Yes, big pig roast and all that. Missed it because was it this Sunday or was it last Sunday? It was this Sunday. Yeah, missed it, but
5th of July. Sorry.
Yep. Yeah. So it was last Sunday. Yeah. Whatever. Where are we? But either way,
that's the 3rd.
Either way,
Sorry.
big congrats to them. They have a mug club now too. If you're in the area and you want some mug club stuff, that's pretty much all I have for now. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode of the podcast. So, guys, anything else to talk about? Nothing. You both want to go to sleep. Actually, all three of you do for way different reasons. But I still got to watch Monday Night Raw, so I'm going to be up for a little bit. But keep an eye on SBLpodcast.com for whenever we're up. And tell a friend to subscribe. And hope you enjoy. So cheers, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Cheers.
Bye.